to another edition of MoxieTalk, where we give you an intimate look into the courage, character, and defining moments of today's most inspiring individuals. I'm Kirt Jacobs, host of MoxieTalk, where previous guests have included leaders from the world of politics, business, culinary, sports, entertainment, art, community activism, and philanthropy. Today, our 359th guest in our series, and the first studio taping with a global pandemic known as COVID-19 in the background, and yours truly in his first Moxie Talk with a full beard. Who knew? We welcome Jeremy Harrell, the founder and CEO of the Veterans Club, a nonprofit veteran service organization. And this is our face mask, Eagle, that I've been utilizing during the pandemic. So, now, for those of you who don't know our guest, allow me to read some of Jeremy's backstory. As a U.S. Army combat veteran of Iraqi freedom, he served honorably for 9 years and was a non-commissioned officer before getting out of the Army in 2008. After leaving the Army, Jeremy went to school at the Mid-Continent University studying business management and started a career in operational management in the manufacturing and the supply chain logistics industry. As a man with an entrepreneurial heart, he wanted to do more to support the veteran community and founded in Kentucky the Veterans Club Incorporated, and has assisted over thousands of veterans in a multitude of ways, such as their nationally recognized Equine Therapy Program, career transition for vets needing employment, family outreach program, and is currently developing the camp restoration community to house and heal homeless veterans. Pretty cool. Veterans Club, Inc. also works heavily in veterans outreach in the community, including raising money for veteran causes and providing meals, job opportunities, and teaching leadership classes to homeless veterans throughout Kentucky. Now, I love this next part. Jeremy also goes into jails and substance abuse inpatient facilities to teach life skill classes in hopes that those who are in there have the tools needed upon release. The Veterans Club Incorporated was the 2019 recipient of the Patriots Award for Veterans Service Organizations. This is a national award given from the American Freedom Fund in Washington, D.C. every year. Jeremy was also named the Kentucky Veteran of the Year and was commissioned a Kentucky Colonel for the works he's done for veterans in Kentucky. Jeremy is a co-chair for Veterans Community Alliance of Louisville, better known as VCAL. Jeremy also serves on the Week of Valor Planning Committee for the Louisville Metro Government, as well as the VA Mental Health Summit Planning Committee, as if he doesn't have anything else to do, geez. Outside of his organization, Jeremy travels with an organization called Mighty Oaks Warrior Program to help struggling veterans in week-long retreats in California, Ohio, Texas, and Virginia. And he was selected as a community influencer for the Mayor of Louisville's Synergy Project, bridging the gap between citizens and police. And if that was not enough of a commitment, Jeremy was selected to serve on the Governor's Challenge Team to help develop policy to combat SMVF, which stands for Service Members, Veterans, and Their Families of Suicides in Kentucky. He is even a very active leader in his church, Southeast Christian in Louisville, and independent from his organization. Jeremy is often called upon by local and some national news affiliates when it comes to veteran-related topics, not limited to PTSD, homelessness, suicide, policy, foreign policy, and more. Jeremy is married to his lovely wife, Erin, and they have 3 daughters named Brooklyn, Maddie, and Lola, and 1 lovely son named Colin. Jeremy, it is a true joy and honor for you to sit with us today and tell us about your human journey. Welcome to Moxie Talk.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely.
It's quite an honor.
Yeah.
What drives you to excel in your area of expertise? I mean, you could have easily come back from your military service, stayed in the private sector, but you chose to do this wonderful nonprofit. So what drives you to excel?
What drives me to excel is because I've been in the situation that a lot of these veterans who've come home from war are in, a lot of the combat trauma, the things that they face, that they deal with, that's long after they've come home from war. And I just didn't think there was enough being done for them, and I thought I could be a good voice, and it was a good opportunity for me to be able to hop in and take care of them. And it's just really cool to see the restoration in their lives, man, as we work through things together. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years, but it's so cool to see how they evolve when they get the support they need. So I love them, and that's why I do it.
Whom do you credit most influential in your life, Jeremy? And it could be more than one, personal or professional.
You know, it's actually my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You know, that's where all the truth comes from, and I try to live out what He asks us to live out, and in doing so, it's helped me along my own journey, which is what we're talking about here today. But it's also helped me help others get on the path that they need to be on as well. So I would say out of everybody, that's it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, did you come to Jesus, so to speak, later in life, or was it instilled early in your life from your family, or?
No, actually, I never stepped foot in a church as a kid.
Wow.
I come from a background, there was no religion, pretty dysfunctional. But when I got to boot camp, if I'm being honest, and that's what we're here to do, right, to be honest, I didn't want to buff the floors anymore on Sundays, right? And so in order to do that, you had to go to services. And I thought, well, I'll go give it a shot because it's got to be better than running the buffer. And so I went, and man, there was something happening in my heart, and I started to hear the words of Scripture, and it just started resonating with me. And I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. And I was just all in at that point. I actually got baptized in boot camp.
Oh, wow.
And so that's where it all started. Yeah, man.
That's awesome. How long ago was that, roughly?
That was in 1999.
So how old were you, roughly?
18 years old.
So yeah, man, you were debatable. You were pretty well developed at that point.
Yeah,
So
it could have went either way. I'm glad that I didn't want to clean floors because I don't know if I would have known Jesus still. You know, so that was just a real pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in guardian angels. You know, that people are watching out for you and shift you and point you in directions that you don't know till we're not here anymore. But that's another show.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What was the most defining moment of your life, Jeremy? And again, it can be more than one, personal or professional.
The most defining moment for me, I think, was being a father. Just how immediately everything changed from being about me to being about this other person, this other human, right? And just, I really sat there and looked at my kids for a while, just thinking, I did that. Like, how are we able to do that? And I just thought it was such a beautiful thing and so cool, and it just changed my whole dynamic and ways of thinking, and everything that I've done up to that point become transition into a more selfless mentality. It was always less about me and more about them, and so. But what that did is it taught me a lot of lessons about life. I didn't believe that at the time, right? I didn't quite like it, to be honest with you. When my daughter was born, I was 20 years old, right? And I was just like, I'm not ready for this. I can't even buy a beer, right? And here I am, like taking care of a human, but then I started to really enjoy the responsibility of that. And then that's when I thought, wait a minute, I'm starting to like serving people, like that servant heart, that servant leadership started to come out at the age of 20, but didn't quite catch on fire yet. But I knew something was there. There was a flicker that I could relate to, and it come to be, several years later, decades later, and here we are. So
yeah, and you've got a few children now. So.
Yeah, we got 4.
Yeah,
so.
We talked about them in the bio. A little quick side note. So I did the antithesis. I had my only child when I was 43.
Okay.
So it was, they hand the baby to you and you're like going, what? What's this? And on something happened on a cellular level. I mean, it's something just.
It's immediate.
It's like, I don't know if they come with kryptonite or something. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing. It is amazing. And what's interesting is that it's the hardest, simplest thing you've ever done.
Exactly. Always, that's so close to what I say. I'm like, it's the hardest, most rewarding job that anybody could ever have, right? But it's so cool to watch them grow and to be a part of that, right? Something so special. So
absolutely. What do you consider to be your biggest professional triumph? And it can be more than one.
I think my biggest professional triumph is, overcoming debilitating injuries from Iraq, not just on a physical level, but on a spiritual level, a mental level. I was diagnosed with PTSD from combat, also traumatic brain injury, and just trying to, anytime you run a business or a nonprofit or anything, that's a lot to remember, a lot of brain work, right? And I have this brain that doesn't always work right, but I just never quit. I just had to adapt and overcome a lot of the obstacles, and I had to develop new strategy, but I wasn't going to quit because I believed in the work that we were doing. So to be able to overcome those setbacks and all the times where I thought, it'd be a lot easier if I just laid back and quit, but that just ain't who I am. And so we just kept moving forward. And so to be where we are now, and a very young nonprofit, but very successful, I would say it was a success, man. So we're just going to keep on plugging away.
Absolutely. Yeah. In my research of you leading up to today's interview, you had mentioned you served about 15 months, I think, and you talked about an aspect of it that most military folk, in my opinion, don't often talk about, at least on camera. In that segment I watched, you talked about how you didn't know if you were going to live or die every day you got up.
Yeah.
And you don't need to elaborate on the injuries that happened to you, but was it a normal day when it happened?
You know, what I talk about a lot is it was really strange having to come to the conclusion that you're probably not going to live.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was 21
Mm-hmm.
and accepting death, right? I had to come to terms with, this is going to be my final resting place. This is where I'm going to, my life's probably going to end, and accepting that and being okay with it. But then there was so much freedom that come after that in regards to, I wasn't so worried. I wasn't so concerned. And what's interesting about that, even in life today, when we get over the fear of failure or the fear of just something not working out, and when we can accept that maybe it won't, then that's when the real success comes, right? Because you don't worry about the what ifs. You just do, and you become a doer. And so that was another lesson I learned at that point that helps me now. But yeah, I had to come to terms with the fact that I probably won't go home, and in order to it helped me do my job better there. So.
Quick aside, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, he passed away pretty young.
Right.
He has a famous quote about, if you just accept the fact that you're not going to live forever, you're free already. Go and do. And I've kind of accepted that after losing family members or whatnot. It sounds like that's what you did for a different reason, though.
Yeah, and to do it at 21, it was weird. But man, like instantaneously, it was just like, okay, well, we got that settled, right? Like, all right, so I'm going to do my best that I can do here for our country, and then we're going to see what happens. And I've been trying to live like that since, because then you don't have any reservations, and you don't have anything holding you back, and you don't worry, you just do. And so, yeah.
On the flip side of that, what do you consider to be your biggest mistake or misstep? Now, you could say regret or disappointment, but in your human journey, do you have one that kind of stands out for you?
Yeah, I would say the biggest mistake for me is not starting to do what I do now sooner. Starting to wait. I'm a perfectionist in some sense of the word. So if I didn't have it all together perfectly in a package, I wasn't going to start. And then I realized that we never have it in a perfect package, right? And if we don't start, then we're never going to do it. But it took me a lot longer than I would have rathered it taken to get to that point. But if I could do anything over again, I would have started this right after coming home, after I finished healing myself, and just quit worrying about the perfection part of that and just do it, and it all falls into place anyway.
When was the aha moment, as I like to call it, where I know what mine was for leaving a professional commercial real estate career and doing this full time. So for you, what was that aha moment where it all just kind of clicks? I think it happens to every human being. I'd like to believe that on whatever level, that this is what you were going to do with the rest of your life, most likely.
Yeah, well, I left the VA hospital one time, and I had heard all the things I wouldn't be able to do anymore, right? And heard the word broken, don't like that word. Heard that word, you're just going to have to take it easy the rest of your life, and you're just going to have to sit back and do the best you can. And I just wasn't. Walking through that parking lot, I'm like, no, that's not how it's going to be for me. That's not. I don't accept that, right? I'm not broken, right? Veterans are some of the most resilient people in the world, and I was like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight, and then after I fight and I learn how to fight, I'm going to teach others how to fight so that they don't leave this hospital feeling like they're broken, because we're not. We have a normal reaction to abnormal circumstance. That's essentially what PTSD is, right? But there's a lot of lessons. So that's why I focus on what I call post-traumatic growth. I dropped that D, that disorder word, because we're not disordered. We just had a different set of circumstances, but we're also equipped to go and do some hard work. And so that's when I realized that, I don't know how many people like me come to this place and hear that, but I got to do my part in stopping that message. And so that's how it all started.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
PTSG, I guess?
Yeah, post-traumatic growth, man.
I like that, man. I like that. It's pretty cool. Can you define entrepreneurship or military leadership in one word in the great English lexicon, as I like to say? You're welcome to more than one word if you like.
I would say perseverance in both. It takes perseverance to be successful. The will to keep driving forward and to overcoming any challenges that come your way, the best of your ability.
Did you lose any buddies over there?
Yeah.
What did that feel like, psychologically?
Man, it's strange because you just never, even though you recognize that you could lose your life there and others can lose. I mean, it's war, right? We get that. Intellectually, I understood it, but emotionally, I wasn't ready for the fact that you may never see that person again or hear their voice again, and there's no easy goodbye. It's just abrupt, right? It's unexpected, and it's just a lot harder to deal with. I think death in itself is harder to deal with when you don't know it's coming. And so it just takes a minute to get over that. And a funny story that the guy that I'm talking about now, I met his mother at an event, at a Gold Star family member event, and I was there as a guest. And there were two women that walked up who were there. They were Gold Star mothers, and I said, thank you for, your sacrifice for our country. And I said I had a friend that I knew there that I lost, and I told her the name of him, and she said, I'm his mother.
Oh, man.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because here we are. That was in 03, 04, and so here we are now. I think that was a couple years ago, and I lost it, right? Because I'm like, man, like I can see that now. And she had a dog tag with his face on it, and it was great that I finally got to meet a woman who raised such a great man. But it was like, wow, we've been in the same city all this time and never even knew it. Now we meet at this point in that way, and now we're really close.
Sure.
We hug every time we see each other, and we stay in touch. And she does a lot of great work for veterans in her own right, and we just try to collaborate and stay in contact.
Dude, I'm getting chills you telling that story. And see, that's the God winks in life.
Yeah, man.
You can't tell me that just happened.
I mean, I turned around because tears were flowing.
Sure.
And I turned around, and the guy that I was with, he's like, you don't have to hide from it, man. But I just was not expecting that
Well, of course
at
not.
all, right? And so, but I was so glad it happened. So glad it happened, because now we have a relationship. So
That's great.
yeah.
Could you describe in detail a particular scenario or incidents where you utilized your own philosophy on leadership? You had mentioned about perseverance. Some guests like to use that word to answer that question, but you can answer any way you like.
For me, servant leadership's important. That's the way that I do things. I lead by serving those who I lead, right? And I do everything that I can to help them be successful, which in turn helps me be successful, right? And so I just always believe in never asking someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, and to be willing to lead from the front, to lead by example. And so that's kind of how we do things at Veterans Club and any other, I also do Veterans Community Alliance of Louisville. I chair that committee, and that's how we do it. I do everything that I ask them to do, and just let them know that, hey, I'm just a man, right? And I'm an imperfect man, but together we can make some good stuff happen.
That's beautiful, man. I love that.
Thanks.
What do you feel people get wrong about Jeremy, Harrell? In other words, do you ever feel misunderstood?
Yeah, and here's why. I feel like people have a hard time understanding. I'm medically retired from the Army. Everything that I do, I don't accept salary for. It's part of tithing for me. It's part of my faith, and it's just me wanting to serve. And I feel like the people have the hardest time understanding that, that somebody could possibly want to do that and serve others and not accept anything for it, right? They just can't fathom it, and so oftentimes they think that there's some sort of secrecy behind it, or somehow I'm being, competent, but I'm not. I haven't accepted a dollar for anything I do, and could make really good money doing this for myself or even for other organizations that's reached out to me to do this. But it's not what I'm in it for. God provides for me. I'm fine. I'm comfortable. I'm content. I'm a simple guy in that way, and so I just use the time that He's given me. I could either sit around and be retired and think about the injuries and think about the what ifs, but instead I'd rather be out using the skills that I've sustained throughout my life to help others, and so that's why I choose to do it. The money can't buy the satisfaction that I get from seeing people's lives change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of parallel to why I do this program, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not what it could be in terms of compensation, in terms of out in the private sector and doing it for a big station or whatever, but I didn't want anybody to drive my narrative,
Exactly.
And God provides me the guests, man, like you and others, And every now and then you get a dry patch for whatever reason. I'm like, there'll be a guest come along. They'll come along. They'll find me.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Well, and then you got that other side of, if nobody pays you, they can't tell you what to do, right?
Right.
And I don't like people telling me what to do.
Yeah,
You know, and
well,
the
I
VA
got-
loves me because I can do some of the things they can't.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just stuff like that. So yeah, man.
Yeah, that's kind of why I stay independent, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When people start paying you, then they somehow feel like they can start
Right.
determining what you do, right? So
Yeah, I don't want to be told I can't have this or that guest on
exactly.
because it doesn't meet some certain criteria.
Exactly.
Or I upset somebody that I don't even know at some other office, and now I can't do the show anymore. Now it's
Right.
not happening. I love this next question. If you could change one thing in your own life or in general, Jeremy, what might that be?
It would be to create more boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
to create more work-life balance. I have a hard time saying no. I often feel guilty saying no, even though I shouldn't. And I've heard from mentors and other, folks that I really respect say, Jeremy, you just have to do it. But when somebody's hurting, I feel like I feel that. And so just trying to recognize that I can't take care of everybody, and just recognizing that I also have to focus on my first ministry, which is my family. So creating those boundaries, turning the phone off, taking a day here and there. And I think that's hard for anybody who is driven and motivated to make a difference in the world. There's just we look at time as time is money, right? And you can't buy more time, and so you try to be a good manager and steward of the time you have, and then next thing you know, you don't have time for you. And so I'm just trying to, that's one thing that I am working on currently and will probably continue to work on until my heart quits beating, right? Because I'm trying to balance that.
Well, some of the questions will come later in the interview, kind of go along the lines of that thought process. Little side note, so I have an app on my phone that counts down the days to the minute and hour when I turn 100 years old. It's very sobering.
Oh, wow.
And so I look at that and go, I've
from
got, the odds of living to 100 are not huge.
Yeah.
So I'll send it to you. It's very sobering.
I need to see that. Yeah. That's
because if you live past 90, you're lucky, and if you don't, that's roughly 3,600 or so days or whatnot.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to make 70. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah,
based off what I've been through so far, So
What did Lincoln say? 4 score, and I never can get that right. But yeah, that's it. So now this is going to be what I call the dessert, if you will, of the interview picture association.
Sure.
So I'm going to hold up some pictures, and you just tell us what's going on in them.
Sure.
This first one I've pulled looks like the logo for Veterans Club. Can you just tell the audience how you came about it, and were you highly involved in the design?
Yeah, so I wasn't highly involved in the design. There was a guy that I went to church with who does that work, and I just said, at the time, all we were doing is I was leading a veterans group at church, and I said, I want to create a logo. I want it to specify Kentucky, but I want to put the flag in it some way that looks cool. That was my exact words, right? And he come back with that, and I liked how he did the flag because to the naked eye, people would say the flag's backwards. But what that means is, anytime you're assaulting forward, you're moving forward, that flag blows this way. And so at Veterans Club, we're always moving forward. We're always fighting to get the quality of life that we deserve and that we want and desire. And as an organization and as a leader of that organization, I'm always moving forward, always, battling in the trenches for these folks that we serve. And so I thought that was perfect. So that's kind of how it come about.
I love it.
Yeah, we just added the arm, the military green in there for good measure. And
That's great. So this is the next one. I was here.
Yeah.
This was a ribbon cutting in earlier, it was March of 2020, I believe.
March 6th,
Yeah. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so that was out at our camp restoration ceremonial launch that we had out there, and I could feel the emotion behind that. And that picture was, I remember, and Fallon, I know her, we do a lot of stuff together, but I remember that particular day, I was rattled, right? Because, I'm thinking of all the lives that's going to change in that land, right? And so we were just talking about what camp restoration was, how it was going to serve vets, and what it was going to look like, and the why behind it. And so I always love the why question, right?
Yeah.
That's my favorite. So.
And this is a rendering of what it would look like. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in the rendering?
Yeah. So those are what we consider, for lack of a better term, the pods for the homes, and each one of them are designated for certain residents. The one on the right would be for ADA, accessible homes. The one on the left would be for single families, and the one in the far, in the middle, north, I should say, will be for single veterans. And we wanted to spice it up a little bit, so we threw some pergolas there, some fire pits,
Nice.
A playground for the kids. But we just want it to be next level. We wanted something where they can be proud of living there.
Mm-hmm. So Jeremy, I want to ask you, for an audience member that's watching this that either hasn't served in the military or isn't a veteran, or maybe they know of a veteran, or they are a veteran, so get all that out of the way.
Sure.
Kind of walk me through, or the audience, walk them through how a veteran would get in contact with you, and then what you could actually do for a veteran once they come into your system, so to speak.
Yeah, so they can reach out to us, our website,
Okay.
veteransclubinc.org.
Okay.
They can get a hold of us on all social media platforms and send a message that way. They can call us on the phone. You can Google, all that good stuff, and then what happens is we reach out to the veteran and kind of see what their needs are, and then we assess what it is that we can offer, and then if there's something that we can't offer, we have community partners that come together to make sure that veterans get taken care of. It's like a one-stop, right? Whether it's us or one of our friends, right? We'll take care of them. If what we don't do, which is very little now, we know who does and who does it well, and so we'll just refer them to those folks if needed, and then we'll do whatever we can for them while we have them too. So, and the way it is being a member of Veterans Club. It's what we hope is a lifelong event, because I think last year alone we had 89 events for veterans to participate in their families. 89, man.
Wow.
So that's that balance, that no boundaries. But it was so cool, and we want to continue to do that. We want them. We are doing life together is our motto, right? It's a formality of a nonprofit, but we're a big family. So we don't never want to let them go, right? Even when they come through our programs, but we want to make sure they have what they need, and we know who can do that.
I love that. So on the flip side of that, say you want to donate.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a veteran to donate, I wouldn't think. Anyone can donate.
Yeah.
And how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, same thing. They can donate via the website. They can send a check to our address. They can go to social media and donate on Facebook and Instagram. But no, definitely don't have to be a veteran. In fact, a lot of the folks who do donate are non-veterans that just support veteran causes.
That's great.
We have about 300,000 veterans in Kentucky, and if you
Really?
add the families, you're looking at about 500,000. And so chances are someone knows a veteran or is in relationship with a veteran, and so we have people who want to support that way. But yeah, I mean, everything that we offer vets are free to them. In order to do that, we need to raise funds, and so if anybody feels that that's in their heart to do, get a hold of us.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to another picture here. What's going on here? Looks like you guys are having a good time.
Yeah. So we were at the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. We won, and it's really bizarre because we're such a young nonprofit, but we won a National Patriot Award last year for the work we do. Winners before us was like Chris Kyle Foundation, Gold Star Mothers of America, just really big organizations that's been around for a while. And I was just happy to be in the conversation, but when they called us out and said that we won for Best Veteran Service Organization, I thought that was pretty cool. And,
Sure.
and that picture there is with the chairman of that organization who presents it, American Freedom Fund, and then Graham Allen, which a lot of people know. He's a guy who has several different talk shows regarding politics and stuff like that. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He does. I like that. And what's going on in this picture? Another looks like a good time.
Yeah. So that's when we were presented. We come up to get the award, and my beautiful wife's with me in the red, and then some of our board members and our leadership team is with me up there to receive the award, and it was just a real sobering situation. Just I remember being in that picture going, this has to be wrong. We're too new. We're too young, but man, it was just so great.
Somebody's watching out, man.
Yeah, man.
Somebody's watching out. What was the name of that event? Do you remember?
It was called the Martinis, Manhattans, and Mistletoes.
I like it.
And they do it every December in D.C.
Imagine
And
that.
when Congress are in recess, they all come to that event. It's kind of like the Who's Who event in D.C. for Christmas, and that's when they do the award ceremony. And so I was just glad to be there in general, but to win, that was really cool. That was really special. I'll never forget that. That was a good validation of the work, right? It wasn't that we don't do it for that. I don't do it for that, but it's just going, man, this is working, so it was a really good night.
Now this looks like more of the personal part of the personal side of Jeremy. What's going on here?
Yeah, so I travel around the country 4 weeks a year, and I talk to veterans and first responders men who are dealing with combat trauma and just life issues, right? And I teach classes on authentic manhood from a biblical perspective. And if we're lucky enough, God intervenes that week, and then guys want to give their life to Christ. And so I get the opportunity to go in the river and do it the old-fashioned way and baptize folks who are coming to Christ.
That's remarkable. So how many of those you think you've done roughly?
I've probably done about six of those.
It's got to be
let's think about that. No, more than that. About 8. Yeah.
It's got to be just as emotional for you as it is them. Now, are there families there, and is it a big deal? Yeah. I would think.
So some of these folks are guys who are at their wits' end, right, with life, and just don't know where to turn. And they a lot of times they come because that's their last resort. Because oftentimes, and I was that guy, that coming to Jesus and even going that route was the last resort for me. I thought I could figure it out myself, right? We're men, we have our pride and our egos,
sure.
right? I got this, I don't need anybody else. But when they recognized during that week that they had it all wrong, and then we were able to transfer hope by using our own testimonies, our own testimony of our imperfection and the failures that we've went through and what has brought us out of that. They wanted to be a part of that. And so they said, I want to live this way. And so that's what we pray for, right? So we get the opportunity to make it happen through him,
That's
right?
beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. On a lighter note, what's this picture here?
So that was at the Kentucky Veteran of the Year dinner. That year, that was last year, so I was a speaker. I was a keynote speaker for that. The year before, in 2018, I won Kentucky Veteran of the Year. So they asked me to come back and talk about it. Yeah, I didn't even know what it was. I got nominated for it, and then I started to research it, and sure enough, man, out of a ton of people, they chose me.
It's remarkable,
it was just
man.
really
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man, that how God's taken my life from being down this dark rabbit hole called broken, right? And then when I finally started surrendering to Him, how He's just taken it and made something beautiful out of it, and has given me the skills to go out and lead in the way. But the key is I do it the way He wants me to, not the way Jeremy wants to.
Right.
That's where the difference is. So,
Yeah, that's why you're on the program, Moxie, man. I mean, it's that courage thing that two people can be dealt. I've done enough of these. I got to say this, of these Moxie talks or interviews. Two people would be dealt fairly the same cards.
Right.
Actually, I think I'm about writing a book about this, and they can respond totally different to the same roughly the same set of circumstances. And there's some people that can use it to triumph over, and others just totally broken, crumble.
Yeah, they just cave, and people ask me that run other organizations, like, how do you become so successful doing that so quick? And I'm like, because I recognize I'm not doing it. And they look at me like a deer in the headlights,
Right.
I'm like, it's not me. I wish from a human standpoint, from a pride standpoint, I wish I could take credit, but I pray about every decision I make. I go and do the work that I feel like He'd want me to do based off what He says in Scripture, and then this is what happens. He turns it into something beautiful. And I said, if you would have asked me that several years ago, I would have said, no way. It's all about me. I can do this. I got this, right? But we got to recognize that we're really weak in that way, and when we try to do things on our own, we're going to surely fail. And I had to learn the hard way. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of beautiful, I love this photo here.
Yeah,
What's going on here?
So this was at the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, and this gentleman in particular, he come up a couple of days after his home had burned down in Florida. He lives in Florida, and he was just really devastated by all that, and then obviously the disabilities that he faces, and I just really latched onto this guy, man, because I seem to get led into the lives of people that have these traumatic things happen to them, and we just become really good friends, and he become a member, and I was able to give him his shirt, and he was just so proud of the shirt,
Yeah.
He's like, man, I love this shirt. I'm so proud to be a part of this, and he wanted to get a picture, and so we took a picture there.
I love that photo, man.
Yeah.
That's great. This is one I call your General Patton. You're in front of the flag, and you're looking all suave there. What's going on here?
Yeah, that was at a gala in Lexington for another organization. I was a speaker, and that was the backdrop of the stage. And I'm like, man, who don't get a picture in front of a big flag, right?
Exactly.
So
I love that.
we took advantage of that situation.
Now, out of all the photos, this one's my personal favorite. So Well, obviously
feel
it's a
that. I can
horse.
feel that right there, yeah.
Obviously it's a horse. Can you elaborate a little bit on why you do what you do with horses?
Man, that's our first horse in the program, right? When it was just an idea and just a hope, and he's been with us the whole way through, and I just recognize that although horses can't heal per se, he particularly was instrumental in my ability to heal and my ability to get the courage and the drive to want to do this for more veterans. He was able to inspire me to say, if this horse can make me feel this way and can distract me from all the stuff and help me, go towards the healing place, right? Then what can it do for other vets? And because of the relationship I have with that horse, it inspired me to do more. And so that was during a video that they did for us, and I said, I want this shot with my horse, because that's how we greet each other. That's our hug, right? We just lean into each other because they're special animals, and they allow us to really they're majestic for one, and they're so intuitive, and they force you to be authentic. And so that's what's so great about our program with Equine, is that it forces veterans to be authentic out there, and horses are just great herd animals, and it's just cool to be when they want to be a part of what you're doing, and they let you know whether you're on the right track or whether you're not, because if you're not right, they want to get away from you.
Okay.
If you are right, they want to come up and do that.
Okay.
And that's just the trust between me and this horse. No, nothing verbal, right? Just an understanding that's supernatural in nature, right? That we know we care about each other. So that's why I love that picture so much too.
So give me an example. A veteran comes in, male or female, what have you. How does the horse come into the interaction with the veteran?
Yeah, so we first groom horses, right? Because if I'm asking tough questions, usually someone I don't know, it's easier for them to answer when there's some sort of distraction there, right? So if I'm just looking at them, there's a little bit of that intimidation or anxiety, and I'm there to try to ease that anxiety, but really get to the root of some pain. And so we brush the horse together, and I just tell them, envision all the dirt and the hair that's coming off that horse. Just envision that's just stuff that's been holding you hostage for so long. You're just brushing that off. You're getting rid of it. And so that gets them used to horses. And then when we go out to do the work, the real work with the horses, I'll tell them, hey, we have to establish a relationship. Like, these horses are prey animals. They want to make sure you're not going to eat them. And in order to do so, you can't have any anxiety or anger or any kind of emotional response that's going to make them want to get away from you, because they feel that. They sense that. That's how they survive, right? Wow. So what it does is it forces veterans to come to terms with that right on the spot, whereas if they're not there with us, they can go in the basement and hide, or they can isolate, which is a killer in our community. But right there, I'm saying, look, we can't go pick this horse up. It's not a poodle. So if we want this horse to work with us, we're going to have to make sure that we're giving off the right vibe, and that we can get to the bottom of what's causing the horse not to want to be here. And usually the veterans say, well, man, I'm just anxious, or maybe it's the horse is big and they're afraid of horses. And I kid you not, while we talk through that, the horses will come, because we're being authentic. We're releasing all that.
Releasing that energy.
So they're like, okay, I'm safe
bad
now.
mojo or what have you.
And they're like, man, look at that. And I'm like, see what I mean? Do this when you're not on the farm. Do this in your life. Do this with the people that love you and depend on you, and you will see your relationships flourish that way. Create that understanding. Talk about these things. Communicate. People want to help. They just don't know how, but you got to help them help you, right? You can't expect them to understand it if you don't give off the message, right? And so it's like an aha moment for them, There was one story I'll share real quick. There was a horse. We usually don't use off-the-track horses for therapy because it usually don't work out real well. But we had a horse down, so we used one that had retired several years ago. And one of the is a male veteran, and he was holding the horse, up by the lead, up by the neck, right? And so we're in a group, and we're just kind of talking, and I'm watching this horse just kind of pull him everywhere. And I can see him getting frustrated because he can't control the horse. And he had 8 feet on the lead. And so I said, hey, what do you think will happen if you gave that horse the length of the lead? What do you think will happen? He's like, I don't know, but man, this is frustrating, And I said, well, just let the horse, have the lead. And sure enough, the horse just wanted to graze. And so he gave the horse the rope, and he goes, I do this to people that I love. I grip them so tight by the neck, and they're always just trying to get away from me. He's like, man, I do that to my wife. Wow. And I do that to my kids. And I'm like, that's all the horse wanted to do. The horse wanted to do what it needed to do, but you were holding it so tight, so controlled. I said, what if you just release some of that? Let that go. Let the people that you love be who they are. Relinquish control. Because at the end of the day, we really don't have control over anything other than ourselves. And so then he would just email me, I haven't yelled at my son in 3 months, and my relationship's getting better because I'm giving her the freedom she needs to be who she is. I mean, just that moment that with that horse and that guy, and just watching that changed his dynamic of his relationship. And that's when people say, why horses? Well, that's why, because they create the conversation that needs to be created so that we can get to the bottom of it without being too invasive, right, and intimidating. So if I'm talking about the horse, I'm not talking about them directly, so they're more apt to give me the information that I need to help them. So that's the modality around it.
That's amazing, because the horses are so big, you know, in comparison to humans.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that they would have that intuition.
Yeah.
So that's remarkable.
Yeah, man.
How did you pick up on that? I don't want to get too long on this, but how did you, did you just kind of...
Just my experience with horses.
With Artie? So,
Just my experience with horses and recognizing how they behave. You know, they're prey animals, and they do a lot of what we did in combat. So wild horses, they'll create a perimeter, right? And the horses inside the perimeter, they'll lay down. If you find a horse laying near you, that horse is super comfortable, because the only way they can get away is on their feet, right? Their speed. That's their only defense, essentially. So for a horse to lay down or roll for you, that just means that they're comfortable, they trust you. And so what will happen is that perimeter will be, you know, they'll be aware of what's going on, but the other horses in the middle will relax, they'll graze, they'll, you know, lay down. And then if something happens, they all run a quarter of a mile, full speed, and then they'll stop and look back and decide whether or not they need to keep running or not. And that's a lot of what we did in the military. If we got hit by an IED or something, we'd pull security. Or anything that we did out in the field, we had a 360-degree perimeter, right, so that we could operate within that. And so when I tell that story, that they're no different that way than us. They're trying to survive like we tried to survive. That creates that relationship between the veteran and the horse immediately, because there's that understanding. He gets it, the horse gets it, and I get it. Man, I can get behind that. They are similar, right? And so, and horses can tell. They can tell by your facial expressions. They can tell. There was actually a special on TV about it, but they can tell your vibe, what you put out, whether or not they want to be around you. So a person laughing, they'll come around you. But if you're, you know, anxious or just in a bad mood, or just, you know, putting out some sort of, you know, tension, then they'll want to go away from you. So that's my own therapy, man. I go out there by myself if I'm feeling that way, and I have to get over it. And then I'll leave without all of that, right? So I want to go work with the horse by myself. I got to get rid of all the stuff. And then I do my thing, and we leave, and until next time, right? But they're always there. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, man. That's really cool. So cool. So I love this picture as well. This is, I wonder what's going through this man's mind, but you were making a documentary, I think, or a docufilm?
Yeah, it was a docufilm, and it was the first time I'd ever went public with my story. Personally. And, you know, that was just one of the shots that they wanted to take, but it was a very, very emotional day. But what's cool about it is the guy who did the videography and kind of produced it, he said, you know, I'm going to cut and do the things, you know, but he never did. We went 16 minutes, and I just went 16 minutes and never stopped talking. And he's like, you know, he was just like, you know, not to cut, right? Because he's like, that was so raw. But I'd been holding that for so long. And then finally, when I let a little bit go, it just all came out. And he's like, I don't want to edit any of that. So that's why it's a 16-minute film now, right?
Yeah.
I'm
going to ask you this for the first time. I didn't ask you this before we went on the air, but if it's okay with you and you have the permission to do it, I'd like to put that at the end of our interview, so those that are watching this, stay till the end. We'll put it at the end, because I think it's powerful, and it needs to be with this part of your journey.
Yeah, and if it you know, resonates with one veteran and somehow inspires them to either go get help or to change the dynamic of their life, then that's worth it. So share it however you see fit. And
this picture, I think I know who you're with here, but what are you receiving here?
Yeah, so that was a proclamation just a few months ago, right before COVID, with Metro Council, just for all the work that we do here in the city of Louisville and in the state, and just recognizing that, you know, just recognizing the work we do, and he wanted to do that personally, and that was, like I said, we don't do it for awards, but those are sort of my report cards, right? It really tells me which way I'm going to go in the future. And so it just validation of the work we do. And so it was just, it meant a lot to me because I'm a Louisville guy. This is my city, and I love it regardless of what's going on in the world, and I'm always going to love it. And so to see the leaders of the city acknowledge how much you give to the city, it just meant a lot to me. It was an emotional day, but it was super cool.
It's super cool. And behind every good man's a great family, as I say. Can you tell who's, looks like wintertime, who's in the photo here with you?
Yeah, so that was that was around Christmas. We were doing Wreaths Across America. That was at Zachary Taylor Cemetery. And it's my wife, Erin, my daughter, Lola, my daughter, Maddie, and myself, and then my son, poor guy, he's the only boy, Colin, on the end.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do that as a family. I thought that was a good lesson to learn there by putting wreaths on graves of those who are fallen. So
it's very good. Very good. So you've got a few other items here, Jeremy, and it's going to stay behind you. It's been behind you basically the whole MoxieTalk, the interview.
Right.
But that was your actual uniform that you wore over in Iraq. Can you tell the audience, mainly for the non-military folks that might be watching this, what some of that stuff represents, I guess, on what would be your right shoulder?
Yeah, so the right shoulder, obviously there's the flag there, the Sultan forward, right? It's where we get that idea. And then the patch is a combat patch from the 16th MP Brigade out of Fort Bragg, or they were in Fort Bragg then. And yeah, that's one of the actual uniforms that I wore there. I don't fit in it anymore. That's a whole nother story. But
I can't fit in my wedding thing either. It's just what happens to us, man.
That's right. That's right.
It just seems to keep doing that, right?
Yeah, but I keep it around. It's just something that I'll visit every so often. I just never want to forget what started the journey, right? And I'm very proud of my service. I really love serving this country. I really love this country. I didn't do it for the college money or anything like that. I did it just because it needs to be done, and I love this country. So I visit that stash of old uniforms every now and then just for nostalgic reasons, and just to remember, So.
And one other item that I always try to ask guests to bring with them that kind of encapsulates their essence. We've had guests do poems, family pictures of family members that are no longer with us, but you have one, and you're welcome to pick it up and tell the audience why.
Yeah, so it's what I call, I know sometimes you'll hear people say there's no instruction manual on life, right? But I beg to differ. This is the Holy Bible, and I tell you, man, the words of God in this Bible has changed the direction of my life. And the reason why I know it's only because of that is because I tried every other thing that I could possibly imagine and failed miserably, and rightfully so. And so when I started doing it this way, the way that it's prescribed in here, things started going a different path, and I started to become a different man, a better father, a better leader, and the desire to serve something bigger than myself. And so I'm forever indebted to these words, and just thankful that we have a God like that to serve.
I'm curious, how many times have you read the Bible?
I haven't read it all the way, front to back. I don't read it that way. I just read it based on what I'm studying. But I do it every day, every morning. I get up, and I call it quiet time. I'll get up and spend an hour studying something in Scripture. Just really depends on what I'm doing at the time. But it's very important for me to start my day that way because I can tell the difference. And I want to make sure that the audience understands that it doesn't make my day any easier than anybody else's, but it just helps me understand where to go, right? And how to fight against the things that come up during the day and recognize that I'm not in control. I got to acknowledge that first and foremost. And when you lead something and when you're considered a leader, sometimes we inadvertently think that we have more control than we have or more power than we have, and in reality we don't, right? We get humbled daily about that, and so it just helps me align my thought process through the whole day on how am I going to lead today? How am I going to do the work that I do? Am I going to do it based off my knowledge, or am I going to do it based off the understanding that comes here? And we know which one's going to be right, and so then it just kind of gets me in the right path, right? It gets me to where I know what to do for the day. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to quote it, but do you have a favorite scripture or verse in there, one that just really resonates with you?
Yeah, it's 2 Corinthians 10:5. Just hold every thought captive. I feel like that's something that's hard to do, especially in these times. But I always use the illustration that if we can catch it right here, then it never gets right here. right? If we can intercept it, then we don't have to have those thoughts. And those thoughts could be anything, right? It could be I'm not good enough, or I'm broken, or whatever it is, right? But if we catch it, then it doesn't hit the heart. It's a lot easier to deal with. And so that's the illustration I use when I go and teach, right? And because whatever's in the heart will come out of the mouth. And we want to make sure the things that come out of our mouth are wholesome, that are productive, and that empower and uplift and are positive, because we don't have to search hard for the negative, right? But we do have to look hard for the positive. And so I want to be a man known for positivity, for optimism, for empowerment, and lifting up others. I don't want to be known for a pessimistic guy who, and some people argue whether you're a realist or not. I'm a realist, but that doesn't mean that I have to ignore the fact that we can turn anything into a positive if we try hard enough, right? And so that helps me do that. So I'll read that every so often. I think it often because, man, sometimes I hear things, and with the current status of the country right now, I get these thoughts, and I'm like, Jeremy, hold it captive. Hold it captive, because it ain't gonna do any good, right? It ain't gonna do any good to just spew anger or whatever it is at the time over it. What are you gonna do about it? What's the action behind it? And so I'm more of an action guy.
Sure.
So yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that, and also your favorite scripture.
Yeah.
So this question is the why question. What is your why, Jeremy? In other words, what motivates you? This journey. What motivates you to do it?
Sort of several different reasons, and I'll touch on this as quickly as possible. But the first thing is because of my upbringing. It wasn't the best. It was a hard life. I had a hard life as a child. And then obviously being in the military, going through the things that I went through, I just hate to see people suffer. I just can't sit back and just be okay with it. And just, we talk about statistics a lot. And then sometimes we if it's a lower number, somehow we assume that, well, that's acceptable, right? And that's not acceptable. From zero is acceptable for me, right? Not 1%, not 0.5%. And so when I know there's people out there suffering, and when God has given me the ability to help in a multitude of different ways, and ability to share the gospel, right? That's our one mission, right? That's our one purpose, the reason we're created. That's my belief. And so I'm going to go out and take an opportunity to do that. I want to share good news with those who are brokenhearted. I want to be the one to say, listen, you can overcome this, and here's how, and give them the way to do that, right? And so that's the why. I don't like to see people hurt. I don't like to see people suffer, especially when there's opportunity to overcome. I want to be known as a guy who battles in the trenches with people, and then helps them come out of those trenches, right? And then helps them prosper. That's just in my heart.
What, as a veteran, and I'm not one, I have no military background, a couple questions. Did your family have a military background, or was this a decision you made when you ultimately went to Iraq? I was curious.
Yeah, so my dad was in the Army for a short period of time. He got out of the Army. Outside of that, I'm the only one.
Okay.
The reason why I wanted to go was mainly initially because I needed to get out of my family. I needed to get out of that environment, right? It was a toxic environment, and I knew that. At a very early age, I recognized that, and so I didn't have money to go any other way, right? So initially, the first motivation was I need to get out of here. That's my ticket. But when I got there, I recognized how much I enjoyed, and I know it sounds crazy for some, but I enjoyed the structure because I didn't have any growing up. And then I enjoyed how it was merit-based, right? And how you could make your own way. Like you had the opportunity to be what you wanted to be, to achieve the rank you wanted to achieve, to go to the schools you wanted to go. And I just fell in love with the military. And it was natural for me to lead in that way, and natural for me to serve. And I fell in love with it. And I've still been, I would have finished a couple years ago, would have been my 20th year, but I may have still been in, but I definitely would have made a career out of it had I not had to get out. But yeah, so that's the reason why I joined. It changed really quickly when I got there. People thought, oh, this is hard and this is tough, and I thought, man, you didn't grow up with me. There's 3 meals a day here in a bed, right? So we're good to go. And then I just started to excel in it because I started to embrace it. It wasn't for me. It was better. The life was better. For some, they were sacrificing. Right, because their lives were what quote unquote normal before. Mine, this was the life, right? Even in boot camp. And so, yeah, that's why I did it. And then I just loved, pouring into others and just training people, and just really having an impact on people. I think I like having an impact, right? And I like using things that maybe I didn't get right, because I have humility in that way, right? What I didn't get right, I use that to try to help others not go down that same rabbit hole. And it just becomes something I just get really fired up about, which leads us into what I do now. So.
Sure. What do you think the average person gets wrong about a veteran? And when I say average, a person that probably obviously hasn't served in the military.
Yeah, well, I think the misconception is that there's a stigma attached to combat veterans in particular, but that they're unstable, out of control, violent, broken. That's a huge misconception within the veteran, well, between society and the veteran community, and that's what they would want to tell you if they were here. They'd be like, I'm okay. Like this wasn't an option. My last resort, right? Sometimes people look at the military. Well, if nothing else goes right, you can always join the military. But for a lot of folks, it was what they grew up wanting to do. So it's not always that go to the Army or go to jail kind of mentality, right? But it's more that they wanted to serve and they wanted to do something bigger than themselves. And so I would say those are two of the biggest misconceptions.
What is the rough number on the amount of American population percentage-wise that's ever even served in the military? It's
like 7%, and then even less than that. I think it's 4%, maybe even less, of veterans who have actually served in combat. So you should just envision 4% or less of the people in the United States have an understanding of what we've been through.
Right.
You can see where the frustration can lie, right?
Sure.
And the communication of what that looks like. And so that's something that we try to help navigate. I can go and speak about these things and say, hey, this is a reality, right? This is what they want you to know. This is the deal between veterans and non-veterans, and so I'd like to do that too when I can. But it's very low number. Yeah.
I'm curious because this question's for non-veteran audience folk and veteran audience members that watch this. But do you feel like the system that we have now with the military, where it's volunteer versus, in my dad's generation, he served, but he was drafted. There's no wrong answer. We don't play gotcha on this program. Do you think the draft or conscription would be something that would change that misunderstanding? Or do you think keeping it volunteer the way it is the way it should be? Or do you feel like maybe doing some kind of community service, like a reserve, you turn a certain age and you do a couple years, and you don't necessarily go into combat, but you get an understanding of what that life is like?
Yeah, so that's sort of a two-part question, but I think volunteer obviously is the best route to go, because you want someone doing the job that wants to do the job, right? It's just the same as if I was making someone do something versus asking them to do it. I'm going to get a better result generally by asking. So I don't foresee there ever needing to be a draft system again. But I still, I have to say that even though those in the past may have been drafted, they did serve honorably, and so I appreciate that, right? And really respect them for doing such a hard job, and maybe that wasn't what they wanted to do, maybe that wasn't their dream, and that doesn't make them wrong. I want to be clear on that, because some people will be like, well, what do you mean you didn't want to serve your country? But there's other ways to serve. It ain't all just about serving in the military, but maybe they wanted to do something different. Maybe they wanted to be a doctor or something of that effect, and so I'm just glad that they answered the call regardless, and they did what they had to do for us. But then you asked also about community service and whether or not I do believe that it would be beneficial for folks to serve a minimum of 2 years, whatever job that they see fit for themselves. But also I think there needs to be, and I'm working towards this in the future, more military culture training within agencies, civilian agencies such as law enforcement, healthcare, just about anybody that comes in contact with people. I think there should be some mandatory training for military culture so that there isn't so much of a disconnect.
That's a good point.
Yeah, well, you get a veteran that goes to a civilian doctor, and the doctor says, "How you doing?" "I'm good." He could have all kind of things going on, right? But if he says he's good, well, then the doctor's like, okay, well, thanks for coming. And just not understanding that generally when a veteran says they're good, that isn't always the case, right? And just being able to go a little deeper into that and ask more questions, right? Just because we're just hard-headed, right? We're stubborn. I don't know a better word for it.
Yeah.
And so, we're just used to overcoming things. And so we're like, oh, I'm good. Just a little back pain. Could have a blew out disc in your back and wouldn't, so I think that would be beneficial for those agencies to participate in some training like that so that we can get it right.
I appreciate you sharing that. I was curious your answer to that because you've actually been there and served and been in combat, so I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah.
So this next question is pretty meaty, as I call it.
Okay.
But what do you consider to be your single biggest contribution to humanity?
Man, that's easy on the surface.
Sure.
It's sharing the gospel of Jesus and how he gives us this gift of salvation, and how he's really the great physician. He's the one that can really heal us and use other people through him to do that. So being able to go and do that, being able to have a platform to talk about that, like we're doing here today, but also being able to go around the country and when people are just looking around like, I don't know what else to do, I can say, well, did you do this? And like, no, I didn't do that. Well, let's try this. And then kind of seeing and oftentimes catching some feedback about that, but no, I don't need that or whatever it may be. But then saying, hey, why don't you give it a shot? You've tried everything else. What's this going to hurt, right? And then watching their faith grow, and then watching them start understanding how it works, and then watching the changes in their lives, the transformations, and then going, see, you know what I mean? So I think that's easy for me. It's just going around and being able to say, I'm a guy who tried everything, self-medicating, alcohol, drugs, just everything you can envision, and then not really getting what I needed until I got into this book, which is why it's here with me today. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
If someone were to ask you, what does Jeremy Harrell stand for, what would you tell them? Not what their opinion or perception might be of you, but what would you tell them?
I would tell them equality amongst everybody. My grandfather, he always used to say, you want to treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO, right? You respect people, no matter whether they're different than you, whether they don't believe what you believe, and sometimes people in this part of the world they forget about that we're to love everybody, right? We don't get to censor that based on what they believe and based on who they are, where they come from, or what their culture's like. We're to love everybody, and I think that's what we get wrong. And I think that's why we're in some of the circumstances we're in now. If we just loved each other for who we are, and accepted that, and embraced it, and even got to learn more about it, and really got to know people on that level, we don't have these things that are going on here today. And so, I'm just all about treating everybody with the same level of dignity and respect, because they all deserve it. Doesn't matter what's in your bank account. Doesn't matter what kind of title you have. God created you in His perfect image, and who am I to determine whether or not how I treat you? I don't have that authority, and how judgmental would that be? And so I just always stand for being the same with everybody, no matter who it is. I don't change for the audience. I stick to what I know is right.
So you're not a chameleon. You're true blue, straight,
yep,
straight and narrow.
That's right. Yep.
I like that. Do you think there's a difference in today's veterans than in previous generations? We kind of touched upon the draft versus volunteering, and do you see a difference now? Than maybe even when you served not that long ago, but is there a difference now, or is it kind of one and the same? And I'm not making light of it. Do you understand my question?
I do.
Okay.
It's different in the way that we fight now. Obviously, we have a lot more technology, and so there's those differences on the surface. But I think there's a little more entitlement mentality these days for veterans versus in the past, right? When you there's a guy I know who has a Purple Heart from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Jeez.
And he does, and he doesn't want any special treatment, right? He is just who he is, right? And so I think sometimes, and I think it's just the culture, even outside the military, just how the world's transitioning is. Oftentimes, veterans feel like they're owed a little more than and this is me telling you this, I'm a veteran, but I feel like they feel like there should be some kind of special circumstance. And while they deserve respect, 100%, and they deserve to be cared for, and that way by the VA and by our country. Outside of that, though, we can't expect anything. Like we made a choice to go and do that. And if the choice was anything other than you want to do what's best for your country and that you love your country and that you want to serve something bigger than yourself, that's a question they need to ask internally. What is it really that drives me? I think that's where they work on that. But I just think there's a little more entitlement. Like you don't see a lot of older veterans feeling like you need to do anything for them. In fact, I work with a lot of them and with Honor Flight and things like that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful program, by the way.
Yeah, they don't, they're like, nope, I don't need you to carry, I don't need you to put, they just don't feel like they need all that. And I think it's a little different in that way. Does that make sense at all?
No, it makes total sense. Yeah. I like that. I like this next question. This is my fun question. So you're kind of driving your own bus more or less, but if you were given 2 weeks right today, you have no obligations, ideally no technology, money's not an object. Where do you go, what do you do, who do you take with you? 14 calendar days, 10 business days.
Man, I find the biggest mountain on the biggest island that I can, and I take my family, and I spend all those days just learning more about them, asking them the questions that sometimes we don't think about because we're just caught up in life.
Sure.
Just really totally disconnected from anything other than I want to know about you. I want to know about your fears. I want to know about your dreams, your ambitions, what it is that you want from life, and just really have that time to really get super connected. Because I think there's a lot of disconnection amongst families, and I don't think it's always on purpose or I think it's just the way of the world. Everybody's trying to make it, right? And you got to sacrifice something, and it's unfortunate. And I hope sometime in the future, we don't have to do all that, But that's something that I would do. I would definitely just take my family somewhere where there is no cell service, and they don't take their iPads and all the things. Right. But we just talk to each other, right, and just really focus on each other.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. If you could have written a letter to the younger Jeremy Harrell, and you had mentioned that you had a little structure growing up. So I think this would be a really powerful insight into you as a person, of who you've evolved into and where you came from. And you don't have to really, you're welcome to, but you don't have to really elaborate in detail on your childhood. But let's say you were 10, what would you have told the 10-year-old Jeremy?
I would have told him that I was proud of him, proud of what he was dealing with at the time, and he had no idea how to even deal with it, right? And that to stay the course. And I definitely would have mentioned, Jesus Christ to him. Definitely would have led in that direction, but mainly just be proud. Don't be ashamed of what's happening in your world because you can't control it, right? But what you can do is you can learn from it. And one thing that I don't regret about the hardships that I endured as a child is that it allowed me to mature at a quicker rate. And so I was doing big boy stuff far before I had to. And I used to have some animosity. I used to be angry about that. Like, why did I miss these years? But I tell you, it's a small price to pay. If I knew that all that I endured would lead me to where I am today, I would do it over. I would sacrifice again because I just love being able to see the transformations in the people that we help. I just love seeing families come back together, marriages restored, and just seeing people enjoy their life again. I'm a servant, at heart, and so I don't think too much about me in that way. So I would have just, told him to stay the course and that, it's all going to work out for the betterment in the future. You're going to get your opportunity for redemption, so to speak, by using your experiences to help others so that they don't have those experiences.
Now, some of the audience might find this an odd question, but I just love this question, so I ask all our guests. If you could have dinner with anyone living or deceased, who would it be and why? It can be a buffet, it can be one-on-one, be liquor, no liquor. I mean, this is your baby. You're cooking the meal, someone else is serving it. You can have as many people as you want.
Yeah, I'd have a steak and bourbon with General George Patton.
Oh wow,
that guy is my my worldly hero, right? Just his ability to lead unapologetically, but not in a way where he wasn't loved, right? But to be the only general who actually was okay with being on the front lines, right? To not thinking that he's so high ranking or so valuable that he can be somewhere else in a protected environment, but really leading from the front. That's where I get that, right? That leading from the front, and part of that is being out there in front of those people that you're leading and saying, hey, I'm here with you, right? We're going to do this together. And so that's definitely no brainer. Like I saw that last night, and I was like, yeah, that's who we got to talk about. So
Yeah, that'd be interesting after a few cocktails. Or
oh yeah.
He seemed to like tell people what to do, and you don't like being told what to do. So I don't know how well that would go or not.
Yeah, he liked to lead, and he liked to lead in a way that even though, like if you read about him, he would say things that were hard. People would be like, that was really harsh. Like, is that, the choice of words, right? Mm-hmm. Especially today's world.
Sure.
But he was conditioning those he led to borne the brunt of battle. You have to be thick-skinned. You have to be strong. You have to be tough. And the reason why he did it wasn't to demean those that he led, but he wanted them to come home. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to make them hard. He wanted to make them tough because that was his job, is try to ensure they come home. And obviously that didn't always happen. Mm-mm. But he put his best foot forward. And you got to love a leader like that who's willing to do what it takes for the betterment of the people that he's serving. So.
Yeah, I bet he'd have a few comments about what's going on in the world today.
Oh, man, that would be an interesting conversation.
Well, that's probably what you'll be talking about.
Absolutely.
The third or fourth one in, but I digress.
Yeah.
So this is our signature question.
Sure.
Nobody gets out of the hot seat, the guest seat, without being asked this question. You're a 359th guest, so you're a man of God. You made that very clear, but God forbid you walk out of the studio today and for whatever reason it's your last day on earth. How do you want to be remembered by family, friends, colleagues, obviously the veterans that you're helping? Yeah. How do you want to be remembered?
I often think about the eulogy, right? Mm-hmm. I'd want to leave a legacy of being known for a follower of Christ, but not just one who quoted Scripture, one who actually lived it out, mm-hmm. right? And a good father, a good husband, but a good leader, but led with compassion and understanding of those that he led, right? Not an authoritarian, so to speak, but a servant leader, mm-hmm. one who would cry with those who needed to cry with, but also would pick those up who needed to be picked up. And if that's the final words for me, I'll take that.
I like that.
Yeah,
Jeremy, I think that's a great note to end on. And even though we're in the background of a global pandemic, we have agreed to shake hands,
sir.
brother.
Yep.
All right.
Thank
I'm
you
really
so much.
humbled and honored you chose to be on MoxieTalk.
Absolutely.
I mean it.
I'm glad to be here.
So much.
Thank you
so much.
Yeah.
If today's discussion has inspired you, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out to Kirt Jacobs at MoxieTalk.com, and we're all over the internet and all the social media platforms. Just type in MoxieTalk with Kirt Jacobs. Until next time, I'm Kirt Jacobs. Thanks for watching.
I'm Jeremy Harrell, founder and president of Veterans Club here in Kentucky, and we do a lot. We're a veteran service organization that does a lot for vets in our state, and I want to talk a little bit about what has led me on this path, a little bit about why I'm so passionate about serving other veterans, and it goes back to my military service during the initial invasion of Iraq, 2003 and 2004. Obviously, war is not a pretty thing. It's very complex. It's very traumatic. It's obviously violent in nature, and a lot of times I don't believe that we're built really to sustain our mentality through all that. Specifically, the length of time that you're deployed. I was deployed 15 months. That's nearly a year and a half. Being in country, being scared all the time, being concerned with, am I going to live? Is today the day where I don't live? Is there a roadside bomb out there waiting on me? Am I going to get shot today? Sort of that kind of thing. And to have to feel that and to have to be afraid of that every single day just really, really does something inside internally, specifically to your soul on a soul level. And it obviously had impact on me, which led me down a dark path coming home. The military teaches us to go to war, and how to do that trains us really, really well. Probably the best trained military in the world. But what they don't do, and what the missing piece is they don't tell you how to come home, and what you need to do when you get home, and how do you process these thoughts and these feelings and emotions and the things that you witness, hear about, or are a part of. How do we do this? Essentially, you go through, you come back and you go through this demobilization pattern, and then you get thrown right back in to the world. And so that's why we have so many issues. Veterans have so many issues, because one day you could be in country doing a patrol, doing convoy security, working in enemy prisoner of war camps such as I, and then a week later you could be back in the States and you feel like you're in a foreign country. You feel like you're a fish out of water, because you're like, okay, how do I do this? How do I adjust to my surroundings now? How come I can't relax? Like, I can't relax. I don't have anything to fear here, but for some reason I just can't relax. And so that leads you down a rabbit hole. And so you get these ruminating thoughts all the time about how am I supposed to go forward? How am I supposed to be a father, to be a husband, to be a producer back in this world? And you're not trained on that. And so what happens to a lot of folks, including myself, is you start doing things to numb those things. You start self-medicating. You start almost acting out in kind of reckless behavior in an effort to, number one, to get the kind of adrenaline that you were used to, but number two, because you just don't know, you just don't know how to react anymore. You don't know what is civilized and what isn't, because you just come from spending 15 months in a place that's very uncivilized, that is dangerous, that is nasty, and it's dark, and it's just a very, very negative location. And now you're back home, and everybody expects you to be, they're very proud of you, and you have the parades, and everybody tells you, hey, great job, we support you, we care about you, you did amazing. And then the next thing you know, the parades stop. And then nobody's calling anymore. Nobody's checking. Nobody's wondering like, hey, Jeremy, how you doing? Or any of that. And so you're feeling like you're all alone, right, in this world. This world that's your home, the world that you fought for, the country that you fought for, you seem to be a thing of the past. And then when you do have those relationships and you do try to step out of your comfort zone and build those relationships with people, you don't even know how. And the transparency is not there, because they can't fathom those experiences. I think the statistic was less than 7%, even of military folks, not to mention the rest of the United States, have ever experienced wartime. And so the odds are against you coming home. So I went down a rabbit hole for several years, eventually losing, being unable to keep a job, being unable to be a good dad, to be a good husband, and not knowing why. And then eventually I had a boss who approached me. He knew something was wrong. He was a former Marine. And he's like, Jeremy, I need to talk to you. There's something going on, and I'm concerned. And so I went to his office, and he says, listen, your employees are saying you're unapproachable, and your cognitive processing's off. And I think you really need help. And ultimately, I lost my job that day. And I thought, and so I'm like, okay, so you tell me I need help, and now you fire me, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And at the time it didn't, but I understood that he knew that if he did not do that, that I would not go and get the help that I needed, that I would just keep on working myself to death, trying to just use that as a way out of my reality. And so with that being said, I left there, went to the VA, got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and didn't even know what that looked like. They put me through a series of tests. Felt like a guinea pig in a cage. They told me what I couldn't do anymore. They told me what I used to be able to do, what my new life was going to look like, and all these things. And I left feeling destroyed. I left feeling like a casualty of war, although I was alive. And I used to believe that the lucky ones are the ones who didn't make it, because the war does not stop for those who have been there. and you live it every day. And so here I am now, 29 years old, and I don't have a mission. And my whole adult life, the military was my mission, and I was very proud of that. I was very good at it. I was just natural at being a soldier, and that was what I loved. Like I loved every minute of it. Even what we call, embracing the suck. Even during those times, I really felt like I was making a difference, and that I was really giving back for the freedoms that had been given to me by those who come before me. And so now here I was, sitting in my house, in my living room, just ruminating about what the VA said about me, about what I can't do anymore, about your soldier situation is over. And man, it was a punch in the face. And I still get emotional talking about it, and I'm sure there's other people out there like me who kind of feel that same thing. That was my identity. And although now I know what my identity is, and it has nothing to do with anything I do as a person, it has to do with my faith. But at that point, my identity was definitely in being a soldier. And I knew that I could fail at all these other things, but that's one thing I did not fail at. It's one thing that I knew I could do good, and so that one thing was stripped from me. And so now I felt like the world was closing in, and now I'm failing at all things. And you can imagine kind of where that went. That was 5 years of depression, hopelessness. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I alive? I'm essentially, some of the words that I would say to myself, I was essentially saying I'm an oxygen thief. And I look back at that now and I go, that's just where my head was. Of course, obviously I don't think that now. And the whole reason we do what we do at Veterans Club, and the whole reason I wanted to start this, is because I don't want guys to think that. Because that's a lie, and it's not true. And there are so many other things that veterans who have had that same experience can do productive in this world. I used to make a joke like I was a soldier and now I'm changing diapers all day, right? It was sort of like my masculinity was stolen from me. And in reality, what I know now is that is an honorable thing. To be able to spend the time with your kids and your family that you don't get to when you're in service most of the time. I looked at that as dishonor, but it was really, I'm honored to say that I got so much extra time with my son because I didn't get that time with my daughter. And so, when this became a thought, it really pulled at my heartstrings because I was like, listen, I fought this battle from 2004 until 2015 to where I really started to get on the other side of the issues that I was dealing with. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take these experiences and I'm gonna use them in an effort to help other veterans from having to go down these rabbit holes. And I knew that if I could use those terrible experiences and all these hardships that I had experienced coming home and the difficulty with post-traumatic stress and these things, I knew that if I could turn that around and use that for good, it would help me heal internally. And that's exactly what happened. And so by me serving veterans, a lot of times they look at me in this role and it's growing and it's big and we're doing a lot of great things. And sometimes I'm afraid, and I want to make sure that word is clear. I'm afraid that they look at me and they say, this guy's got it all together. But it's not true. In fact, I need them as much as they need me, if that makes sense. Serving them helps me because a lot of times we can't take our own advice, but when I see the change, that some of the lessons I learned over time can help affect even Vietnam veterans. When you have a Vietnam veteran out at your ranch, going through your equine program, and he looks at you and he says, Jeremy, I haven't felt this relaxed in 40 years. That's overwhelming. I immediately got emotional. I'm not even 40 years old. This guy's been suffering for 40 years in silence, essentially. And he spent 4 hours with our horses on the ranch and with brothers and sisters alike that understand the struggle, and he immediately felt that sense of relief. And that's just enough, because obviously I don't do this for money. I don't make money doing this. I do this out of love for my fellow veterans. And when I hear that, that's what keeps me going. When I see the success stories, and I see people overcoming those same obstacles that I faced, and they start living life in the way that they desire, and they start having intentional lives, and they start really like changing the game for themselves. That's all I need. Money can't buy that. The things money can buy are temporary, they go away. But to see somebody continuously be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better person, better business owner, whatever it is, that's all I need. That's what makes me tick. That's what makes me get up early in the morning, even when I don't feel like it sometimes, because there's days I don't feel like it. Or when I answer so many emails, or I'm going from place to place to place, and I'm overwhelmed myself, that's okay. That's okay. Because I'll do anything. And I hope that my actions so far and in the future will prove that I'm willing to do anything to help my fellow soldiers, airmen, Marines, seamen, Coast Guard, get on the right side of the tracks and let them lead a life that they can be proud of and that motivates them, and that they can have joy restored in their lives again, and let them know that trauma doesn't own you. We're not monopolies to trauma. Trauma is the thing that we have, but we can separate the emotion of that trauma from the memory to where it's just like any other memory, but we don't have to suffer for it. And I only know that because I did both. I suffered, and then I was able to, through my faith and through horses, believe it or not, I was able to disconnect that emotion, for the most part, to those memories. And I want to do the same in any capacity I can for any veteran out there that needs that. So listen, if any of you out there who have served this great country and you signed that dotted line and promised to give up to and including your life for what we stand for here in America, and you are suffering or you are struggling and you don't know from day to day how you're going to make it to the next one, or you feel like you don't have anybody to rely on and you're all alone and you're isolating, you're avoiding all these things that are going through your mind, I beg you as a brother to reach out. My phone is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm dedicated to working with you. Reach out to me, no judgment, it's all love. Veterans Club is all love. That's what it is. Reach out, and I want to walk with you through these problems. I want to fight with you. I want to be in the fight. I want to be in the battle with you. Two is better than one. Because if you only have one, nobody's there to help you up. Let me be that other guy to come and help you through whatever it is you're going through. I want to do that. We don't just want to send you out to a program and say, hey, thanks for coming. I hope you got something out of this. We want to do life with you guys. And when I say do life, I want to know you forever. I want to know how your family is. We want to know how your spouse is. We want to know what's going on with you. Like, we will follow up. We will do anything, resource-wise, no matter how many times you have to come through our programs, no matter how many conversations we have to have. Please feel comfortable doing that, because that's what I am dedicated my life to at this point. And our whole organization and everybody who's on the team has dedicated their lives in an effort to help you. Let us do that.